Okay, let's talk about the answers to the quadratic review. Number one, the answer is D. The reason the answer is D is because A is positive, so that means it's going to point up. Here, A is negative, that means it points down. What else do you need to know? A equals is the same thing as saying coefficient of x squared, or if you see the words leading coefficient, it's talking about A. On your worksheet, you might want to cross this section out because that shouldn't be there. Okay? And the answer is reflected over the x-axis, and this is why. If you go to the calculator screen, let me zoom in for a moment. And I'm going to add a graphing screen. I'm going to type in 2x squared and negative 2x squared. When I do that, I see that it is reflected across the x-axis, meaning I can fold the coordinate plane at the x-axis, and the blue one would be on top of the red one. So that's reflected across the x-axis, answer D. Now we move on to number 2. Let me zoom back out so you can see. Number 2 is asking how does x squared differ from 1/4 x squared? Well, A is 1 for the first one, and then A is 1/4 for the second one. And if I am going to get smaller, the graph is going to do the opposite, get wider. The example we gave in class was if I go to the gym a small amount of times, I'm going to stay wide or get wider. And how can you check it? You can graph it. So control doc, add a graph, and it would be x squared for the first one, and then 1/4 x squared for the next one. Let me zoom in so you can see. And this is the x squared graph. When I press enter, the graph gets wider. You can do the same thing for 3, but you have to be careful. It says leading coefficient this time. It doesn't tell you A or show you A. So you have to know the leading coefficient is A. And then it says that you're going to double that leading coefficient. So that's like saying 1 and then changing it to 2. But remember, it's getting bigger, so the graph is going to do the opposite. It's going to get narrow. Okay? On 4, it says leading coefficient again, so we're talking about A. And what is happening to A? It's becoming 1/8. So it's getting smaller. That means the graph is going to do the opposite, get wider. Number 5, how do the graphs x squared plus 4 and x squared plus 1 differ? Okay, if you don't remember that, that means that one of them is going to be at 4 and the other one is going to have a vertex of 1, then you should graph it in the calculator. So when you look at your calculator and it looks like this, you will be able to answer D. X squared plus 4 will translate up 3 units if you start with x squared plus 1. So x squared plus 1 is where you started, and it went up 3 units to get here to x squared plus 4. Number 6, how do the graphs y equals x squared plus 1 differ from x squared minus 1? Well, if you notice, every time I talk about C, and C is the term without the letter, x squared, that's the A term, this is the C term. And neither of these have the middle term B. We haven't talked about B at all. So C, when it changes, the graph moves up or down. When the A changes, it gets narrow or wide, or it flips upside down. So in this question, I can eliminate A and B because this last one changing, the C changing, means it's going to go up or down. Well, if I'm positive and then I become negative, I am going to go down. So the answer is C. On number 7, it says, what does decreasing the constant by 5 units? What is that going to do to something that's in this form? Well, remember, C is what changes when you move up or down. And if I'm going to decrease the constant, it didn't say move C. It didn't say move A. It said decrease the constant. So in this problem, it wants to know, do you know that the constant is the C term? And as long as you know that the constant is the C term, you know that this is moving up or down. Decreasing means 5 units down. So the answer is D. So just a little bit review. When A is negative, the graph is going to point down. When A is below 1, that means 1/4, 1/8, 1/2. Those numbers are small, which means my graph would be Y, the opposite. When A is bigger than 1, 2, 3, 4. You could even use -4, -2, because you don't pay attention to the negative. It's the absolute value of it, so only the positive version of what you see for A. But whenever you have those numbers, it's going to be narrow, the opposite. 2, 3, and 4 are big, so my graph would do the opposite. It would be narrow. When you're talking about the C, meaning the number in the C spot, like +1, -1, +1, +4, your graph is going to move up if C is positive and down if C is negative. Okay, number 8. This is the function graph, and I want to find the zeros. Between what two numbers is there a solution of the equation? And it's already set equal to 0, so I'm ready to move and ready to work. The answer has to be A. This 0, although it is between -5 and -4, that's not an answer choice. And here it's between 1 and 2, excuse me, between 1 and 2, that's not an answer choice either. The only one out of A through D that describes one of the solutions is going to be between -6 and -3. That solution there, that makes A be the answer. On number 9, it says, what does increasing the constant C by 3 in the equation y equals x squared plus C do to the graph? Well, increasing the constant means the number without that letter. So that would be the last term in most cases, the C. So if I increase it by 3, remember C moves up or down, that means it's going to go up 3 units. Answer is C. Number 10, how does the graph y equals -3x squared plus 9 differ from y equals x squared plus 9? So we probably should graph this just to make sure. So I'm still zoomed in, and I'm going to do Control Dock and get a new screen, get a calculator graphing screen. Type in -3x squared plus 9, and then type in 3x squared plus 9. Okay, and I'm going to press menu, zoom, so 4, and I'm going to zoom out because I want to see this a little better. Zoom out, there we go. So I noticed that they do share a vertex, okay? So they have the same vertex, so this is right. So different vertex, that's wrong. Different vertex, that's wrong. Different vertex, that's wrong. So it leaves one answer, which is B. You should have also known that it flipped upside down, okay? So this one is pointing down, that one's pointing up. And one other thing, wider is not true. Why? This is bigger if you ignore the negative and you look at 3 versus 1. He's a bigger number, so he's going to be narrow. He's a smaller number, so he's going to be wide. And it says -3x squared would be wider. No, -3x squared was narrow. So the answer to this question is B. Number 11. To do number 11, we have to first make sure it equals 0, and it doesn't right now. So I take my positive 2 and I subtract 2. And when I subtract 2 to both sides, I have 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. And now I am set equal to 0, so I can solve and get my A, my B, and my C. A is 6, B is 7, C is now -3. I can do menu. Let's first put it, go to the right screen, sorry. There we go. And I'm going to add a calculator and do menu, 3 for algebra, 3 for polynomial tools, and 1 for find the roots. And A is 6, B is 7, and C is -3. And it gives me the answer -3/2 and 1/3. So the answer is A. You could have also graphed it and went to menu 6-1 in the calculator in the graphing screen. So Control Doc, add a graph. Type in the equation after it equals 0, but don't put the equals 0. So plus 7x minus 3. Checking my work. Don't put the equals 0. You can't have two equal signs. Menu 6 for analyze, and then 1 for 0. And so we'll go in the middle if you like, click, and then go to the right, and you see an answer, and then to the left, and you see the other answer. So that's -1.5. That's the same as -3/2. And then 0.333, that's the same as 1/3. So the answer is still A. I like using menu 331 because it gives you the fractions. Number 12. Number 12 says x squared plus 3 equals 4x. You notice how that doesn't equal 0? So I need to subtract 4x on both sides. But when I do that, it doesn't change the 3 or the x squared. Did you notice that it just scoots the x squared over into 3, goes into its proper place, the B spot? Because the number next to x is always B, just like the number next to x squared is A, and the number without a letter is C. Now, what does that have to do with this problem? If it's not set in this form, you can't do anything with it yet. You have to get it in standard form. That's ax squared plus bx plus c form. Ax squared plus bx plus c form. Now we look at the table and we're looking for solutions. Well, solutions, meaning the value of x when y is 0, would have to be 1 and 3 because that's when y is 0. But it is not 0, 3. That's the y-intercepts. We want the x-intercepts. So the answer has to be D. If you thought that 0, 3 was the answer, that is not a solution. That's a y-intercept. So now we look at 13. On 13 it says x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. So he's set and ready to go. And I look at my table, and there is an x-intercept because x-intercepts would be when y is 0. You can also say f of x equals 0. F of x equals 0 is the same thing as saying y equals 0. Or you could say 2, 0, which is what you see here, and then there -1, 0. So the answer is C. The answer is not 0, 2. 0, 2 is the y-intercept, and we need the x-intercept. So the answer is C. On 14, which of these are characteristics of the function? Okay, I noticed that A is 1, and it's positive, so that means it's going to point up. And 1 says the graph of the parabola points up. So that's correct. This is a characteristic of that equation. The graph has a line of symmetry at that is the y-axis. So let's graph it and see. I'm going to do a new document. I'm going to tell the calculator no, I don't want to save. I'm going to add a graph. And then I'm going to do x squared minus 8. Press enter. And when I do that, I am going to zoom out just to get a better look at it. Zoom out one time. And I look at the middle. Where's the middle of this graph? The axis of symmetry is the y-axis. You can also test it. Menu, analyze, and we can go down to minimum. When we do that, click to the left, drag to the right. And remember, the vertex gives you the axis of symmetry and the minimum, or axis of symmetry and the maximum. This is the minimum. So that 0 represents the axis of symmetry, which is x equals 0, which is that line, a vertical line. So yes, the axis of symmetry is the y-axis. Then it says the graph is translated 8 units down. Okay, well, if we look at it, is it 8 units down from the parent function? Because that's what it says. Well, who is the parent function for quadratics? The quadratic parent function is y equals x squared. So let's go and look at y equals x squared and just make sure. Well, the parent functions always go through the origin. And is the blue graph 8 units down from the red? Yes, it is. So what can we say? The answer has to be D. Okay, we're going to move now to question 15. 15 says that a rock fell from a cliff to the ground below. The graph shows the change in the rock's height with respect to time. So I'm starting at 70. How would the graph change if the rock fell from a height of 50 instead of 70? So if I start here and then I go to 50, what's going to happen? It moved down how many units? 20. So the answer is B. Number 17. What is the solution set for the equation x parentheses 10x plus 1 equals 3? I had tried to graph this like this and just type it in, and it did not work. So we have to do a little math first. X times 10x is 10x squared. X times x is 1x equals 3. Well, now I've got to move this positive 3 over to the other side, which makes him minus 3. And now I have my A, which is 10, my B, which is 1, and my C, which is negative 3. When you put all of that into the calculator using menu 331, the calculator gives you answer D. Number 18, this lady is standing on a balcony when she dropped her bracelet. If she fell to the ground below, the table shows the height of the bracelet over time. Which below represents the equation? Which below represents this table? So which equation is the answer? This took a little work, and my best advice for you, when you see an equation, you can type it in the graphing screen, but I want to practice plugging in the x value to get the y. So I think the answer is D, and I want to check it. So y equals 50 minus 16, plug in the x value, 1.75 squared. And so now I'm going to type that into the calculator screen and see if I'm right. So on a new document, we'll start over because I got a lot, might have messed up, and just showing you how to start over. Maybe you had too many screens open. So 50 minus 16 parentheses 1.75 close squared. And it gives me 1, and that's what it says. So now I'm going to try 1.5 and see if it gives me 14. So arrow, arrow up, change that to 14, press enter, and it tells me, did I do it right? 1.5, oh, I plugged in 14, didn't I? What was I supposed to plug in? The x value, because the x was in that spot. That was x, so you have to plug in an x. So let's go fix that. And it should say 1.5. 1.5, and we wanted that squared. Okay, let's try it. Did I get my 14? Yes, I did. So I keep trying, and I plug in all my numbers, and I notice that every last x value gives me the y value listed. So D is my answer. Now, I want to show you why C is the most picked answer for this question, because we're going to go to the graphing screen, what most of you would do, and type in 50, not the y, because the f of x is the y, minus 16x squared. I'm going to go to the table, Control T. Do you see any decimals? No. So there are only a certain amount of points you can check. So we can check 1 is 134. Yes, it is. And then we can check 0 is 050. Yes, it is. Based on what we just said, would you think this was the answer? Yeah. Well, I'm going to show you how to trace real quick. If you press menu and then go down to trace, and I've never shown you this in class. And now all I have to do is type in the x value. So I type in 0.5. It says at 0.5, it's supposed to be 46. At 0.5, oh, well that worked out. Let's try 1.5, see what happens. Just type 1.5, and what do you get? Menu, trace, graph trace, type 1.5. I'm looking for 14. Did 1.5 give me 14? Yes, it did. So it looks like I typed in the wrong equation, didn't I? Because I typed in the correct answer, which was D. So let's fix that and show you C. And C says 50 minus 16x, not x squared. And so now we go to the table and we see the 134 and the 050. But when we take the table away and we go menu and we trace and we go to graph trace and we type in 1.5, it's supposed to give us 14. But what does it give us? 26. So you could have thought that the answer was C because this one matched this one. But you didn't check the rest of the points. So C is incorrect. The answer is D. So you learned how to trace and you learned how to plug in, just in case you forgot. Let me hurry up because I don't want this video to be long. On 19, there are different quadratic functions in the form ax squared plus c, and they're graphed below. What do we know about the values of c? We're describing the values of c. So this is right there. How can you represent the values of c using inequalities? Well, this is c right here. And what are the values doing? They are decreasing. So they're below 0 because 0 is here. So which answer choice says below 0? That would have to be A. Okay, now I have already written over here the answer to these two questions, so I'm going to write it above it. And it's going to be negative b, so negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 3 squared in parentheses minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Now, did you notice that he had to move over first, which is why b is negative 3, not positive 3? Good. When you write your answer for this up here, be very careful. That becomes positive 3. I do this in the calculator or by hand, and I get 49. And then I put that all over negative 4. I saw a question like this on the STAR test, and this negative, people ignored it and wrote the answer as 3 plus or minus square root of 49 over 4. And that's incorrect. This negative is going to pop up to the top, and the final answer is going to be written in this form. Yes, you can simplify the square root of 49 and make it 7 and then finish this problem. But I've seen in the past that most of the STAR test questions give you a number under the radical that cannot be simplified. So I just wanted to show you this to remind you to move that negative up if the bottom is negative. On this next one here, you have to subtract 2 on both sides. And when you do that, your C value is negative 5. Which is why you see here C is negative 5. And then you plug it in, you get negative b, so minus, a negative times a negative is a positive, so this becomes plus. And then this here is 9 plus 40, which is the square root of 49 over 4. Well, everything's positive. You can leave your answer positive, but if you're going to finish it, it would be 3 plus the square root of 49 is 7 over 4, and 3 minus 7 over 4. And that gives you 10 over 4, which you can reduce. And then negative 4 over 4. So 5 over 2 and negative 1. I've never seen them ask for you to finish the quadratic formula on the test, but who knows, they just may. Okay, that concludes this homework. You can do 21 and 22 on your own because they are review over something we haven't covered yet. So I want to give you a chance to try these two questions without me showing you. Thank you for watching.